Okay, so we'll begin with today's session. So firstly, I would like to welcome all of you to our Pan-India 9th Journal Club. We have successfully completed eight journal clubs in 2023, and this is our first journal club in 2024. And we have come up with a very interesting topic on the centenarians. So today's topic is characterization of Portuguese centenarian eating habits, the nutritional biomarkers, and the cardiovascular risk, which is a case control study is what we'll be discussing today. And the flow of presentation is the pan introduction will be done by Dr. Suleiman. The introduction part will be, study introduction part will be done by Dishna. Methodology part will be done by Dr. Sandhya and Sandhya. The results will be done by Dr. Suleiman, and discussion part will be done by Dr. Pritham, Dr. Melinda, and Dr. Sundar Ezmi, and the conclusion will be done by Dr. Mitesh. So let's begin with the pan introduction. Suleiman, can you please take over the pan introduction, please?
Sure, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, perfect.
Greetings to everyone present today in the 9th and Journal Club, which is the first Journal Club of 2024. We are quite excited for this year. And I'm Suleiman, second year MBBS student of Bangalore Medical College. And as we are a part of team working to spread awareness on better daily dietary choices, I'll be giving a small introduction for the PAN team. And as we always mention that prevention is always better than cure forms the fundamental idea of the PAN organization. So it's a highly spirited team and which is growing positively and moving towards an approach to build a network globally and nationally to improve the nutrition system with the power of the right dietary choices and to prevent diseases. And since a change is always contradicted, hence PAN team works rigorously to appeal to the society through evidence-based guidance. For this, to reach out nationally and spread this positive movement, PAN India was launched in September of 2022 with various cardiovascular diseases, which forms a topic for today, and reaching new heights. Pan India has a aspirational approach. We organize polls, quizzes, feedback forms, query answer sessions, journal clubs every month to disseminate this information to a wider group, especially through means of social media. And the PAN team, headed by our director, Dr. Rajina Shahin, also houses spirited volunteers, interns, ambassadors, which include a large spectrum of professionals, right from medical students like me who are yet in med school to working doctors, professionals, nutritionists, and much more, all with the goal of improving the broken nutritional plate. And moreover, it includes all of you who attend the PAN events and form the backbone of methods to spread our message. And as it's quite evident that the team is showing positive growth, so anyone interested in the same goal towards improving the knowledge on dietary choices, we always open-heartedly welcome you to join and be a part of this movement. With a small introduction, now I request Dr. Deshna ma'am to continue with the introduction of today's journal club, which is on the topic centenarians and dietary habits, nutrition biomarkers, and cardiovascular risks. Over to you, Deshna ma'am.
Thank you, Suleiman. Good evening, everyone. Now let's have a background check of this particular topic. With the introduction, longevity is the achievement of a long life. Life expectancy at birth, your established indicators of population health and the economic and social development of a country. We may hope for longevity so that we can experience many years of quality time with loved ones or have time to explore the world. But living to a ripe old age doesn't necessarily mean healthy or happy longevity if it is burdened by disability or disease. The population of people over age of 65 has grown more quickly than other age groups. People are living more years in poor health. Here we see the distribution by country of the age in years, that is life expectancy at birth in different countries all over the world. We can see that in Latvia, the life expectancy is near about 50, whereas in India, its highest life expectancy is seen in Japan, which is around 80 years. In India, particularly, life expectancy at birth increased from 2000, which was around 60, to 70.8 in 2019. Where on the other side, it is healthy life expectancy at birth. The healthy life expectancy was around 50s to now, which is 60s. We cannot consider a healthy life. Okay. Harvard researchers looked at the factors that might increase the chances of longer life. They found out 5 factors, that is healthy diet, which is diet low in calories but rich in nutrients with a greater proportion of carbohydrates from plant source and limited consumption of dairy, fish, meat, and processed or refined foods, which can improve longevity. Regular exercise, that is at least 30 minutes. Healthy weight, as defined by BMI of about 18.5 to 24.9 kg per meter square. No smoking and moderate alcohol intake. This data was utilized for men and women from the nurses' health study and health professionals follow-up study who were followed up for at least for about 34 years. So other than this, the additional factors which were considered for longevity were having life purpose or meaning, connections, brain stimulation, improving sleep quality, and intermittent fasting. These were the factors which were found to help improve a healthy life. So now we'll look at the blue zones. Blue zones, certain population in longevity blue zones where unusually high numbers of people live to be over 90 or 100, provide valuable individuals appear not to be resistant to the development of age-associated disease, but exhibit either delayed onset or improved survival. These are the blue zones which are seen all over the world. So with this background, the title of the study for this particular study is Characterization of Portuguese Centenarians, Eating Habits, Nutritional Biomarkers, and Cardiovascular Risk, a case control study. The study is very old individuals are a rapidly growing age group around the globe, thanks to the improvement in medicine as well as the modification in lifestyle. Nutritional characteristic is a key component for achieving good health. Adults approaching 70 years will more likely face problems of caloric excess. On one hand, they will face the problem of caloric excess leading to overweight or obesity. On the other hand, there is a physiological decline in food intake with aging. Findings from a meta-analysis indicate that high consumption of red meat, in particular processed meat, is associated with higher all-cause mortality. A meta-analysis of 12 cohorts studied showed a 20% increased risk of diabetes per 120 grams per day increase in red meat intake, and for processed red meat, a 57% increase risk per 50-gram day increase. So with this, now we know that the problem they face is obesity, one of the problems. So this adipose tissue, which is the cause of obesity, adipose tissue is an active endocrine organ that affects insulin sensitivity and production of insulin-like growth factors and increase the oxidative stress and chronic low-grade inflammation affecting immune response. So the adipose tissue specifically affects the insulin sensitivity, so which eventually leads to diabetes and other problems. Increases in fat mass may contribute to the loss of muscle mass at the same time, that ultimately leads to sarcopenic obesity through increased inflammation and upregulation of protein degradation via ubiquitin proteasome pathway. In obesity, the presence of inflammatory factors may have detrimental effects on amino acid utilization or insulin signaling pathways involved in the stimulation of muscle synthesis following food intake. Thus, the type of diet and eating habits may determine throughout a nutrigenic interaction the level of reactive species, oxidative stress, and chronic disease development. Nutrient affects gene expression and genomic integrity, modulate disease process such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegenerative diseases. The type of food and dietary restriction can lead to cell health status, capable of modulating apoptosis, ROS, that is reactive oxygen species, and reactive nitrogen species detoxification, and gene response towards disease prevention and longevity. So eventually we know that the type of diet, the nutrients present in them affects the gene expression, eventually leading to or preventing disease progression. For all these reasons, and because there are still no studies in all Portuguese population on this field, the study specifically we went to characterize the eating habits and nutritional and cardiovascular biomarkers from Portuguese centenarians to compare them with both high and low cardiovascular risk controls. With this background, I would request Sandhya to continue with the methodology. Thank you.
Good evening all. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
So this study is being conducted between the year 2012 and 15, where centenarians from all the regions of Portugal were identified, enrolled, and evaluated at their place of residence. So, though these centenarians were uniformly distributed among the country, predominantly they were found in Castello Branco district, which is a rural area, followed by Lisbon. So, in this study, there were totally 521 subjects, which includes both the genders. Among these 521 subjects, so they have taken 253 centenarians who were aged across 100.26 years approximately. And among these centenarians, women were about 77.9%, whereas men were about 22.1%. Though these centenarians lived most of the time in the rural areas or the interior of the city, their understanding capacity was quite acceptable, and the communication level was also good during the study, it was observed. And coming to cognitive studies, cognitive scores, it was superior in case of the men than compared to women. And in this study, they have taken the control group. So the total, there were 521 members. Among that, the centenarians were categorized, and the rest of the people who were aged across 67.51 years, they were taken as a control group. Among these control group, again, the women were approximately 61.2%, and the men were about 38.8%. So this control group they have taken from the hospital called Santa Maria Hospital, as well as from the primary healthcare center from the Lisbon. So since this is a national level hospital, the patients were across the country, and they have included both LCR as well as HCR, which is low cardiovascular risk patients, as well as high cardiovascular risk patients were included in this study. And the study also says that most of the centenarians lived in the interior of the country, and around 30% of the centenarians were used to live in the coastal region. So coming to nutrition data, the anthropometric and body composition was analyzed using bioimpedance, portable tetrapolar bioelectrical equipment. And coming to weight, BMI, that is body mass index, and fat mass, muscle mass, resting metabolic rate, all these categories were analyzed using Tanita BC420 MA device. And coming to data collection of these centenarians and the control group, they have specially modified this food frequency questionnaire, especially for this Portuguese population, that is semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire, which includes 10 food groups, that is red meat, fish, egg, sweets, dairy products, vegetables, legumes, fruits, oilseeds, and canned foods. And coming to the identification of these multiples and submultiples of the middle portion, they have used the photographic manual, which is given by Dr. Ricardo George from the Institute of Public Health. And coming to the differences of consumption of these food groups between centenarians and the control group, which they have categorized, they have used the statistical tools, which you will be seeing in the further slides, continued by Dr. Sandhya. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Sandhya?
Yes.
Yes, you're audible now. You can continue.
Good evening, everyone. So continuing with the methodology part of the study, after the nutritional data, they have taken certain biomarkers to assess the cardiovascular risk and compare it between centenarians and the low risk cardiovascular group people and high risk cardiovascular risk group. So following are the biomarkers which have been taken: glucose levels, total cholesterol, low density, high density lipids, then triglycerides, urea, uric acid, creatinine, etc. And for this, they have established certain cutoffs which has been taken from the standards laid down by World Health Organization, and they are as follows. For the cholesterol, to assess whether they are having dyslipidemia or normal limits of cholesterol, they have taken from the WHO standards the total cholesterol if it is greater than 200 milligram per deciliter, if the triglycerides are greater than from 150 milligram per deciliter, low density LDL cholesterol greater than 100 milligram per deciliter, high density HDL cholesterol less than or equal to 40 milligram per deciliter in men, or less than or equal to 50 milligram per deciliter in women. And to assess the abdominal obesity and body mass index, it has also been taken from the standards laid down by WHO. For abdominal obesity, if it is greater than 1 or 2, that is the waist circumference, if it is greater than 1 or 2 centimeters in male and greater than 88 centimeters in female, it is said to be having the higher risk of cardiovascular diseases. And similarly, BMI. BMI, the standards laid down by WHO are as follows. If it is greater than 25 kg per meter square, then it is said to be they are overweight, obese, and the chance of cardiovascular disease is more. And for sarcopenia also, they have taken the muscle mass index cutoff. If it is less than the muscle mass less than 16.7 kilogram per meter square, then it is said to be having sarcopenia. Next slide. Yes. And after taking these biomarkers, they have used a calculator where they will put all these values into the calculator and they will get a score. And that, what is that scale used? It is Q risk score calculator. The calculator that is used is Q risk 2 calculator. This is a continuation of Q risk 1 score calculator, which has been developed by UK-based NHS doctors after collecting data from lot of people aged from 30 to 70 years. And this Q risk 2 score, what it contains, what are all the values that it contains? Can you go to next slide, Dr. Sindhura? Yes, the Q risk 2 is the algorithm which will predict the risk of cardiovascular diseases in people in the coming 10 years by taking following parameters: the general data, age, gender, ethnicity, their address, then the BMI, the smoking status, alcohol habits, family history of the cardiovascular diseases, their blood pressure, and the biomarkers we have discussed, the cholesterol, and diagnosis of certain disorders like diabetes, the presence or absence of atrial fibrillation, renal disease, and rheumatoid arthritis. Now, what is the difference between Q risk 1 and Q risk 2 is the rheumatoid arthritis, atrial fibrillation, these were not taken in Q risk 1 score. They have been added in Q risk 2 score, which we have used in our study. Now, Q risk 3 score has also been developed in the year of 2017, but in this study, they have taken Q risk 2 score. And to conduct this study, they have taken the necessary permissions from the Scientific and Ethics Committee of the Lisbon Academic Medical Center. And also, they have conducted the study in agreement with the Helsinki declarations. And to conduct the study, they have taken written informed consent from all the participants. Next slide. Yes. After collecting the data regarding the biomarkers, the nutritional data, everything, they have done statistical analysis by using SPSS 20.0 version. And the following statistical formulas have been applied to assess the results. For the quantitative variables like age, how many males are there, females are there, they have used mean and standard deviation, and normality of all the variables which have been taken in the study, whether they are falling into normal distribution or not, they have used Smirnov test for the same. And the comparison of categorical variables, they have used chi-square test. And the comparison of means between the groups, means between between the centenarians, low cardiovascular risk group and high cardiovascular risk group, in between the groups, they have used ANOVA test. And to find the association between any biomarker or any risk factor and the chance of development of cardiovascular disease, they have used odds ratio. What is the chance of developing the cardiovascular risk if they are having this biomarker in higher level? And to know the test of association, that is the test of significance, how much is the risk factor associated with the development of cardiovascular disease, they have taken a p-value at the cutoff level of 0.05. Yes. Thank you. And the results will be continued by
Dr. Suleiman.
Suleiman. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Next slide. Okay. From the methodology that was just explained, yes. So from the methodology that was just explained, previous slides. Okay. from the methodology that was explained, the data that was analyzed is here, and the next few slides will first focus on the diet that was used. So, as you can see, previous slide. No? First, that was it's a generalized way of the number of meals that were taken per day. As we can see, in the centenarians, the number of meals taken were significant of them reported that they had just 1 to 3 meals per day. But then the cardiovascular risk groups reported that they had quite a lot of meals, which means that, and even the amount they used to overeat, and whereas the centenarians they used to not completely fill their stomachs either. So over here we can see that the amount of food taken was not too much overeating in the centenarians too. Next slide. Now let's focus on the individual types of diets that were taken. So, coming first to the red meat. First, in the red meat, which is clearly a non-plant-based diet. So, the centenarians, almost all of them reported that they either never had it or they had it like about once, uh, quite a few times every year. But then both the low and high cardiovascular risk groups reported that they had about 1 to 6 times a week, which means that's about once per day, and that's why they have been into the cardiovascular risk groups. Fish, which is reported to be again significantly as similar to the red meat, which is considered to be less consumed by the centenarians, whereas again as considered to the red meat, fish was consumed about a month, 1 to 3 times per month by the cardiovascular risk groups. Coming to eggs, eggs which form it's the controversial thing because as anyone approaches from a completely non-vegetarian non-plant-based diet to a plant-based diet is initial introduction of eggs in them for them to cope up with it. So but then still as we see there was not much of difference in the type of egg consumption, but then when we come to canned food there's a huge amount of difference seen because canned food has got a lot of preservatives and which is considered to be unhealthy for the people. So centenarians reported almost nil amount of centenarians reported that they used to have it at a frequency of more than once per month, whereas the majority of the cardiovascular risk groups reported that they used to have it a lot of times per month and even multiple amount of times per week. Next slide. Dairy, which forms a part of everybody's diet, was did not show much amount of variation in them, and even with vegetables as we go. But then when we again come back to legumes, the centenarians reported that they used to have consume legumes almost every day, which is and even a significant amount of them told that they used to consider it 1 to 3 times a day, which means they have it about every meal. And but then the cardiovascular risk groups seems to have more of the meat and the fish in the diets compared to the legumes. And fruits was did not show much amount of variation. Oil seeds, as we come to oil seeds, the cardiovascular risk groups reported that they have consumed not enough amount of oil seeds, but then centenarians, there's not much variation in the amount of whether they had very little or a significant amount per month. But from the overall thing, we can see that the red square over here shows that the low cardiovascular risk groups have had a low consumption of oil seeds. Next slide. Okay. As it's always that there is always a benefit of something, but then as the condition of red meat over here, there's always a risk benefit ratio that we look for. There is a slight benefit of having red meat, which means that it provides a protective factor for sarcopenia. But then the risks associated with red meat consumption outweigh the benefit of sarcopenia protection, which shows that fat mass increases significantly. The people are overweight and obese when they consume red meat. But then the benefit that they get is that they get a benefit for sarcopenia. Next slide. This is the continuation of that about the consumption levels. The dark colored bars are for the centenarians and the light color ones are for the cardiovascular risk groups. So red meat was almost never consumed by centenarians, but then red meat was significant amount formed a significant proportion of the diets in the high and low cardiovascular risk groups. And now, when we come to indirect measures of obesity like hip waist ratio, waist circumference, and also basal metabolism, it was reported to be lower in the centenarians as compared to high and low cardiovascular risk groups. Waist circumference and hip waist ratio, which can be used as an indirect measure for obesity, was reported to be lesser in the centenarians as compared to both the high and low cardiovascular risk groups. Lipid profile, which includes cholesterol, which is the major cause for cardiovascular risk groups, was shows a significant difference in these because the total cholesterol levels were 178 in the centenarians, but then they've crossed about 200 and reached to 200 in the cardiovascular risk groups. And LDL cholesterol is about 96, but then the cardiovascular risk groups again is crossing 100. And a lipid, this table shows the lipid profile comparisons in the centenarians and the cardiovascular risk groups. It's over to discussion.
Dr. Pritham, you can continue, please.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Just a second. I'm audible, right? Hello.
Yes, Pritham.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction as well as the methodology and the result part. So here just already the Dr. Suleiman has given the significance and how the percentages of these red meat intake or the complete dietary pattern of the Portuguese centenarians. Here just I'm just giving the major key findings, right? So coming to the dietary patterns, they have showed that these centenarians had a lower frequency of the consumption of this red meat when it is compared to that of the control, where they have that the intake of these fruits, vegetables, legumes was higher, which contributed to their longevity. So the daily red meat intake was found to be, as he said, that it has given a protective against the sarcopenia. So in contrast, it also contributes to the excess fat mass, overweight, and obesity. So if we take this red meat and also the processed, or we can say that canned or industrialized food intake, it is associated with higher risk of this cardiovascular diseases. And also, if we come to this metabolism, the BMI, body composition and all, it is lower in case of the centenarians when it is compared to that of the control. And also the lipid profiles were also lower in case of the centenarians. Next. So everyone loves to be be healthier and live longer, right? So in that view, the Dan Buettner and with the team of this National Geographic and the National Institute of Aging, they have started digging how or what are the secrets of this longevity. And already one of the team member of my team member already discussed this blue zones, where the highest percentage of the centenarians live. So they have lived with virtually no chronic illness. I mean to say, with a less risk of these heart disease, obesity, cancer, diabetes and all. And these are the 5 places which are already discussed in our previous slides. Yes, next. So yes, so there the person's health and the longevity is always influenced by not only with the one factor. We can say that it includes the combination of the factors, that is the wholesome diet, the various lifestyles. We can say the one who is not taking the who is not smoking, and or he can take the moderate alcohol consumption, and with the regular physical activity and the social networks, being social, and also maintaining the good mental and spiritual well-being. So with this synergetic interaction, then only with the genes, only happens that it gives the potential impactful on our health and increase or healthy aging may happen, right? So called these blue zones also, though uh, they reside at the different places, right? The geographical diversity is there, but they share the commonalities, maybe in the diet, the physical activities and all. So they share the commonalities. So the same, and also the dietary factors or the dietary habits as well. So the same thing has been discussed in our study, this Portuguese centenarians as well. So the diet is one of the most determinant shaping in the composition or the richness of the gut microbiota, and the gut, how this gut microbiota is a one major factor, so which helps in the longevity. So that gut microbiota profile and all, which will be discussed in our further slides, by one of my colleagues. So where in the present study also, the Portuguese centenarians, they also consume more legumes, fruits, vegetables, and less red meat, which is indicating potentially the lower daily caloric intake, and they majorly focus on the foods which gives more health benefits. Okay, and also those may contribute to this longevity. The same things which are observed in the blue zone centenarians, that we can say they follow the predominant plant-based diet. That's the beans, the green leafy vegetables, or the grains, nuts, the whole grains, right? And also nowadays there have number of researchers going on. So what is the secret of this longevity? So we can some of the research studies they have published in the nutrition journals, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they showed that, or they published that the 5 serving is good. 5 servings of these fruits and vegetables is good. If it is more also, it is better. So that adds 3 years extra to our life, and also drop a 10% drop in the mortality. And in one of the journal, that is the study has published in one of the journal, that is Journal of Epidemiology and the Community Health, where eating the 7 or more portion of these fruits and vegetable can definitely lower the risk of this premature death by 42%. So everyone, we just look into that. If we say the predominant, everyone look into that. These predominant plant-based diet gives only the healthy aging, right? But also with that also, it also helps in environment sustainability as well. So if we come to these predominant plant-based diet, that is the legumes, fruits, vegetables and all, they have these bioactive compounds. They are rich in the fiber, the polyphenol rich, they are antioxidant rich, and also few of these fruits and vegetables, legumes, they have a good amount of these vitamins and minerals. And also the nuts, we can say that it has a good packed proteins. So which helps in they also have which helps in or they gives an antioxidant activity, which have the free radical scavenging activities, and also helps in the systemic inflammatory balance, where we can say that it helps in restore the homeostasis or the inflammation, pro-inflammatory activities and all. It helps in balancing those, and also it helps in the brain functioning. We can say that the fiber rich, it also helps in the bowel movement, and also controlling these blood glucose and all. So apart from that, if we say apart from this, it also, as I said, it helps in the environment sustainability. The legumes also play an important role in the environment sustainability, where it at low water consumption to grow these legumes and all, and also the carbon sequestration, what's the carbon dioxide absorption, so that the carbon dioxide in the environment, it balances. And even in the primary schools also, we have studied that these legumes have the rhizobium, that the bacteria would have the capacity of nitrogen fixing, right? So these all helps in how these climatic changes, what happens, this helps in balancing. So that's the greenhouse gas emission is we say that it is less emission if we go with the this plant-based diet foods, when it is compared to that of the red meat consumption. Next slide. So as I said, the red meat consumption is associated. One is it is harmful for the environment, as well as it is also associated in personal way. It is also associated with a negative health effects such as the obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, which shows that higher mortality rates will occur if it is the intake of these more red meat or the processed meat. Here, few of the factors, the numbers which shows that the percentage that if we intake is more, that is the processed red meat intake is more, it is around 50 gram per day. If we increase, about 57% of risk will be more, the diabetes risk is more. When it is comes to this red meat, it's around 120 gram per day. If we increase, the intake is increased, then the 20% increase of risk is more for the diabetes. So on the other hand, the question will be there, right? We say that the heme iron is good and its bioavailability is good. On the other hand, we can say that the heme iron also have the free heme iron. It also can catalyze the oxidation process in the biological system, and finally it leads to the damage of the disease and uh, the cardiovascular risk and the other risk factors which is there. So here this is good image which shows that the mechanism of the potential health risk of this consuming this red meat or the processed red meat. So the free heme iron, which catalyze, as I said, that catalyze the oxidation process and which lead to the tissue damage and the disease. And we know that the processed meat or the heme iron, the red meat, so where it for the processing, what happens, they use for the lifespan lifespan, or we can say that shelf life, shelf life, they use the nitrates and the nitrites. They are the preservatives they use in these red meats, the processed red meats as well. So that what happens when this nitrate and the nitrite in the meat, they are metabolized into the nitric oxide, right? Which in turn reacts with these secondary amines. We can clearly see in the picture. So the nitric, in turn, it reacts with these secondary amines in the stomach, and which forms the N-nitroso compounds. So these N-nitroso, so these nitroso compounds, like we can say that the processed meats are more, as I said, it has nitrates and nitrites. So these processed meat, that the bacon, sausages, we can say the hot dogs and all, that forms the N-nitroso compounds. And also, not only it may be of the dietary way, it also comes from the environmental sources as well. If the person is taking the tobacco or he is smoking, then also the formation of these N-nitroso compounds will be more. So with these, when these N-nitroso compounds formed, again, and few of them are formed in the gut as well. So with this, when apart from this, these heme iron reacts with this lipids or the fats in the form, it forms in the lipid alkoxyl radicals and also the heme oxy radicals, which initiate further oxidation, and the oxidative chain reactions happens, where the free radicals will be more. We can say that. And also the heme iron, when it reacts with a polyunsaturated fatty acid in the gut, which results in this reactive oxygen species, we can say that, which they can react again with the free radicals like a superoxide anions or the singlet oxygen and all. So in turn, again, it leads to the damage of the DNA and disruption of the normal cell as well. So we can say that these abnormal gut bacteria and also then imbalanced diet, it contributes to the higher risk of these cardiovascular cancers also happen. So with this, what actually we need to focus on? One is, we can say, to just substantiate this, these things, the Harvard School of the Public Health, they have studied this spanning about, it has for 20 years, they have studied with more number, with a 1 lakh people. So what they also published that or reported that the daily serving, okay, the additional daily serving of this processed red meat, it raises the mortality risk by 20%. So we can say that we are losing an hour of our life. So if we eat the bacon sandwich, if we eat that. And also it leads to the 20% of high risk of cardiovascular disease and 16% of higher risk of this cancer. Right. So the American Cancer Society also, they said that we need to limit 2 serving of the red meat a week, right? And also we should focus on the more predominant plant-based foods. So along with this, as I said, the gut microbiota and also these bioactive compounds which are present in these fruits, vegetables, legumes and all. So in detail, few of the things, how actually these bioactive compounds helps in the free radical scavenging activities and all, those things will be dealt in the further slides by my colleagues. Hand over to Dr. Melinda. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Coming to the gut microbiota. We already know that the healthy microbial population within the human gut lives in perfect symbiosis with the host. And now it is recognized as an organ which is involved in several functions such as energy balance, glucose and lipid metabolism, immunity building, gut wall trophicity, meaning that it helps in the villi, the surface area, the epithelial cells, the crypts. It helps in maintaining this trophicity of the gut, which is responsible for absorption of nutrients. It also helps in motility of the gastrointestinal tract, and lastly, metabolism of harmful compounds from the environment. Now, there are two groups of bacterial groups which are present in our body. The first one is the core microbiota group, which is present almost in everyone during the entire aging process. This belongs to Lectospiraceae, Ruminococcaceae, and Bacteroideaceae. Now, in this study, we found that in longevity, there is a unique shift of this gut microbiota to another group of bacterial groups, which includes Akkermansia, Bifidobacterium, and Centenarians. Now, to maintain the balanced gut microbiota, it depends on certain factors, which includes your diet, prebiotics, probiotics, and symbiotics. Symbiotics is basically the combination of both. Now, in this slide, you can see the diagram where the yellow color shows the core microbiota and the colorful small dots around it shows the subdominant variable fraction. Now, in a young age group, that is 22 to 48 years, the core microbiota group is much more compared to the subdominant variable fraction. Now, as you see the aging process, once you cross 100, the core microbiota shrinks, whereas the subdominant variable fraction increases. Now, this is the shift which is extremely present in the longevity group. Next slide, please. Now, as we have seen through the entire JC that we were talking about red meat. Now, one more aspect of the red meat is that it contains dietary choline and carnitine. Now, this dietary choline and carnitine is the one in the gut. What happens is the gut microbiota will utilize the choline and carnitine, and it will produce something known as TMA. Now, this TMA stands for trimethylamine. Now, this trimethylamine will get converted into TMAO, that is the trimethylamine N oxide, in the presence of FMO3, which is your flavin monooxygenase, which is present in the liver, which is an enzyme. Now, this TMO is the factor which is responsible for various health disorders, including your kidney fibrosis and loss of function. In the heart, it can lead to heart failure. It has a direct effect on the arteries, leading to atherosclerosis and vascular inflammation. And via indirectly, that is your platelet hyperresponsiveness, it can again lead to thrombosis and atherosclerosis and vascular inflammation. Now, this was already explained by one of my colleagues, where they mentioned that the centenarians themselves have low levels of cholesterol, whether it is total cholesterol or HDL cholesterol or triglycerides or the ratio. It is lower in centenarians comparatively to the low and high risk cardiovascular groups. Okay, next slide, please. Now, as ma'am had already explained, the canned and industrialized foods consumption, they lead to many problems. And this consumption is much more in high cardiovascular control risk group. Now, they consume around 72.3% of the canned foods compared to the centenarians, which consume less than 2.1%. Now, these industrialized foods, they contain polyphosphates, which are used as an additive in the food process. So, these phosphate levels, they lead to vascular damage and cardiovascular morbidity, which leads to age-related disorders. Now, with this, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Sindhura ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. So as we have seen in the introduction part, as well as in the start of the discussion part, my colleagues have discussed about how red meat can create the negative effects or increase the cardiovascular risk. So trying to understand about it a little more better, and also we'll be talking about what are the various antioxidants that can prolong the longevity also in the following slides. So coming to meat consumption, which can be a possible contributor to prevent sarcopenia because of the protein content, a complete protein content, maybe we can say, as verified by the Rondinelli and team. But the underlying cause of sarcopenia can be unclear, which may include even the lower basal rate of protein synthesis in the aged muscles of the elderly people. Meats are the sources of the protein, which can be stimulatory for muscle protein synthesis, and that can help in better muscular gains and strength, but when combined with a proper exercise program. But however, the red meat is also a source of saturated fat and cholesterol. So as we know, we have studied about these in our previous JCs also, we mentioned this, that high intake of saturated fatty acids, it increases the total cholesterol levels, the LDL cholesterol levels, and the triglycerides, which could ultimately increase our risk of stroke. And again, no sarcopenic obesity was also either observed in the controls or in the centenarians, which were mostly eutrophic. Eutrophic means the people who predominantly depend on the plant-based foods. And in certain cases, if required, protein supplementation can be considered in patients with sarcopenia, where there are no other medical conditions, which can contribute to improve not only the muscular mass, but it can also help in improving the cognitive aspects as well. Now, from this study, it was verified that the group of centenarians, they consumed more vegetables, legumes, fruits than compared to the control groups, which might have contributed to their longevity. And the epidemiological studies suggested a role of fruits and vegetables in protection against the disease of aging. So these are also a couple of examples of the centenarians living in the Korean area and the Chinese people, where we can see the majority of their dietary contributions are from the grains and the cereal part, vegetables, fruits, and a very minimal amount of meat and meat products. So WHO also considers that these should be the main foods which needs to be ingested, that is the predominantly plant-based foods. And actually, the exogenous antioxidants that are greatly relevant for the longevity are vitamin C, vitamin E, carotenoids, polyphenols, and the trace elements like selenium and zinc. So we'll be discussing one of each of them in detail right now in the following slides. The centenarian's diet has predominated mainly from the plant-based kingdom or the vegetable kingdom, we can say. So moving ahead, how these different substances has contributed for the longevity. Let's look into the details. First, we'll start with vitamin C. So the vitamin C, it can reverse several age-related abnormalities in tissues, which includes reducing the inflammatory responses, by protecting the DNA integrity, and reducing the biomarkers of cellular stress. If they are left unaddressed, all of these can contribute with rapid aging or the accelerated aging processes. And vitamin C can significantly lower the risk for heart disease as well as the cancer death by almost 25% less likely in the people who have a good consumption of vitamin C compared with people who has a very minimal amount of vitamin C consumption. So vitamin C has also been found to cut the risk of premature death from cancer, cardiovascular diseases, and weakened immune functions by significantly improving the quality of life, and it also promotes the longer lifespan as well. So these are some of the vitamin C rich plant-based sources like all your black currants, red pepper, bell peppers, red bell pepper, green bell pepper, the kale, papaya, cranberries, strawberries, kiwi, grapefruit, mango, oranges, raspberries, tomatoes, potatoes. But make sure since vitamin C is pretty much heat unstable, make sure to try to consume it in the raw form as much as possible, because the different methods of cooking can drastically minimize the percentage of the vitamin C in those plant-based foods. So coming to vitamin E, it is a potent antioxidant which can scavenge the loose electrons, which are also called as free radicals. The vitamin E primarily protects the cells from damage associated with oxidative stress that's caused by the free radicals. It also enhances the immune function and prevents the clot formation in the heart arteries or the coronary arteries. And the brain is very highly susceptible to oxidative stress, which increases during the aging process and is considered as a major contributor to neurodegeneration as well. So this vitamin E has the potential for better cognitive performance, and it has the ability to prevent or delay the cognitive decline. So these are some of the vitamin E rich plant sources, all your predominantly nuts and seeds like almonds, sunflower seeds, peanuts, pumpkin seeds, avocados, and all those things. So coming to carotenoids, carotenoids are known as a highly effective physical and chemical singlet oxygen quencher, and it's a potent scavenger of the ROS. The high consumption of these carotenoids is inversely associated with age-related diseases. It has also been suggested that the alleviation of chronic diseases is mainly due to the antioxidant properties of carotenoids. If you can see, this RS system can lead to the inflammatory signaling, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular dysfunction, and finally, which can lead to the accumulation of the aberrant proteins that can lead to the formation of cancer, eye disorders, cardiovascular issues, osteoporosis, diabetes, and the neurodegenerative diseases. And these carotenoids can actually block this ROS. So ROS is nothing but the reactive oxygen species, which is leading to multiple disorders like the inflammation, cellular dysfunction, cell death, and mitochondrial dysfunction. All of these can be blocked by these carotenoids. And certain carotenoid-rich plant foods are like your pumpkins, grapefruits, carrots, yellow bell peppers, leafy greens, broccoli, tomatoes. Now moving on to the next compound, that is polyphenols. The polyphenols or polyphenol-rich diets provide significant protection against the development and progression of many chronic pathological conditions like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular problems, and aging. So here are some of the polyphenol, predominantly divided into two categories, flavonoids and non-flavonoids, and the various examples, the various sub things with some of the food examples also have been mentioned here for easy understanding. And the several researchers suggest that the combination of antioxidant or anti-inflammatory properties of polyphenolic compounds are found in fruits and vegetables that can show efficacy as anti-aging compounds. And among all this subset of flavonoids, anthocyanins have been shown to have potent antioxidant or anti-inflammatory activities. And not only that, they inhibit the lipid peroxidation as well as they inhibit the inflammatory mediators like COX-1 and COX-2. And polyphenols are also beneficial in ameliorating the adverse effects of the aging on the nervous system or the brain as well. So coming to the selenium, which is a trace element, it may remodel gradual and spontaneous physiological changes caused by the oxidative stress, potentially leading to disease prevention and healthy aging. The selenium is involved in improving the antioxidant defense mechanisms, immune functions, and metabolic homeostasis. And an inadequate selenium status may reduce human life expectancy by accelerating the aging process or increasing vulnerability to various disorders, including immunity dysfunction, cancer risk. So we can find the selenium in all, in predominantly the nuts like Brazil nuts. It could be pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and all of those things. We can find the selenium. So by consuming around 2 Brazil nuts per day, we can meet our RD of selenium per day as well. So coming to the study strengths and limitations, in this case control study design, the sample size that has been taken is adequate, and the group of centenarians are compared with a group of younger individuals, assuming that the probability of reaching 100 years is remote for the control group, and it's also assumed that the cardiovascular risk of centenarians is small compared to the control group. But the only limitation is the estimation of energy intake that might not have been exactly considered. So this completes the discussion part, and I would like to I would like to request my colleague Dr. Mitesh to give up the conclusions of the study.
Thank you, Sindhura ma'am. So now I am going to discuss the conclusion from this study. Okay, so in conclusion, the centenarians exhibit a different food history than the control population. When frequent consumption of red meat contributes to obesity and increased cardiovascular risk, centenarian foods, which are high in vegetables and legumes and less in red meat, although associated with sarcopenia, may promote a long lifespan. So now here I have created a table using the information from this study. Here the first column contains food groups which with a frequency of 1 to 3 times a day. The second column contains a percentage of controls with a high cardiovascular risk who eat these food groups, and third column contains percentage of centenarians. So here you can see that the percentage of controls with high cardiovascular risk who eats red meat and canned food is 64.3% and 75% respectively, whereas the percentage of centenarians eating these foods is only 2% for red meat and 0% for canned foods. Now, in the rows of vegetable, legumes, and fruits, you can see that the percentage of controls with HCR is comparatively significantly less than the centenarians, and also the percentage of centenarians who eat these food groups goes up to the 62.1% for vegetables, 91.8% for legumes, and 48% for fruits. So from this, I wanted to highlight the point that when compared to controls, while what they don't eat or eat less frequently may have a significant impact on the centenarian's health status, what they consume in excess may play an equally significant role in their lifespan and overall well-being. Okay, so this is the today's takeaway slide. Here I have tried to present the benefits and the possible risk of predominant whole food plant-based diets and diets which excess intake of red meat respectively. So in predominantly whole food plant-based diets, these are the diets which are rich in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. These diets also provide antioxidants, which in turn helps us to fight with inflammation and oxidative stress. And studies have also suggested that these are the diets which are associated with improved overall health, cognitive function, decreased risk of chronic diseases, and gains in life expectancy. Now coming to the diets which allows excess red meat intakes, these are the diets which leads to the high intake of cholesterol and saturated fats. These are diets that may lead to the overload of heme ions, and in turns leads to the increased oxidative stress and results in biochemical and cellular damage. So in the cumulative effects of all these factors makes these diets, or these are diets that associated with the increased risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular diseases including stroke, cancer, and all-cause mortality. So I would like to end my discussion on the note that okay. So I would like to end my discussion on the note that, like a banyan tree, we all can enjoy a strong and a healthy long life. For that, we just have to embrace the roots of healthy lifestyles with a little discipline and patience. Thank you all for patiently listening us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitesh. That was the conclusion line was really good. Thank you. So any queries from the participants, or how do you felt about this session? Was it useful for you? Was it insightful? Just please do drop some queries and your inputs and your responses and feedbacks in the chat box, please. Sure. We'll definitely keep in mind for the future JCs as well. Thank you so much. What about ghee, even though veg? Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. So when it comes to ghee, since this was done in the Portuguese centenarians, So that was not considered. But again, when it comes to the ghee, it is also rich in saturated fat. So what we would say is, for someone who would like to take the ghee, it has to be, the quality needs to be very good, because mainly there is a high probability of the adulteration of the trans fats again, and the consumption of the saturated fat also has to be very, very limited. It has to be less than 7% of our total kilocalories of our daily calorie intake to minimize the cardiovascular risk. So keeping that in mind, we can include the sat fat accordingly. So can you post a study here? So we'll post it in the group, ma'am. In the physicians group, we'll be posting it. Yes, and as well, ghee also does not align with our plant-based dietary pattern as well, since it's an animal-based product. So any more queries? All right. So if there are no more queries, what about sesame oil, olive oil? So olive oil, they belong to the unsaturated fat categories. So olive oil is definitely a very good inclusion. But what we would like to say is, when it comes to the edible oils, predominantly we need to be focusing on the unsaturated fats, that too like unrefined, cold pressed or wood pressed. But the point here, whatever the kind of oil it might be, I mean, among the unsaturated fats, make sure it is the quantity of the inclusion is much more important. Even though if it's an unsaturated based oil, if we go for higher quantities, it can again increase our risk. So hence we need to be very mindful or conscious about the quantity of the edible oil consumption. So predominantly we need to be deriving our unsaturated fat from the whole foods, like your nuts and seeds, rather than going from the edible oils. Yes, it is better to eat whole foods, to try to include more whole foods rather than going for the edible oils. Yes, any more questions? So if possible, please drop some of your reviews if you found this JC insightful in the WhatsApp group, so that more number of doctors can keep joining from the next JC session, and that can be helpful for them as well. Please try to share among your friends and communities as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking your time out on your busy schedules and attending our journal clubs. It means a lot. It motivates us to bring even much more better JC articles, JC studies, even in future months. So we'll be coming up with a very good, interesting topic in the next month, February. Please stay tuned for this space. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. Take care.